Well, howdy, everybody, and welcome to the Tuesday live stream. Today, we have one that I'm pretty excited about. I've wanted to do this for months, but Dana's a busy guy. So we've got John Willis from Special Operations Equipment, Dana McClendon. Where do I say that you're from, Dana?
McClendon Law Office and Mercenary at Large.
Mercenary at Large. And
Sure.
I'm Nicole from Living Free in Tennessee. And the way this goes, guys, is we'll talk about whatever you bring up. So to get my attention, just put the first word or two in all caps, and I know that you mean for me to see it and you're not just talking among yourselves. But we were kind of chatting before we got on here that something that might be fun to talk about are common misconceptions about law enforcement. So Dana, we'll start with the obvious first question. If I shoot somebody in self-defense on my front lawn, should I drag them into my house?
No. Let's don't compound what may be a terrible mistake in the first place by making the second one quickly. No, do not attempt to fabricate a narrative or evidence. You will be caught and it will be worse.
Yeah. So you think they could tell if I dragged somebody who was bleeding everywhere into my house from the lawn to my house?
For anyone that has not watched cable television for the last 30 years, forensics have advanced to the point that they can tell. Yeah.
Have you ever encountered that piece of advice? Have you ever seen that happen?
Oh, sure. People say that all the time. If you shoot someone, pull them through the door or the window or whatever. This is terrible advice.
Have you ever
coming from?
Have you ever heard that come up in court?
I've heard people. I not exactly that. Like someone shot someone and then attempted to relocate the corpse. I've certainly seen people move the body, and it never goes well because it becomes an instruction on it becomes a jury instruction on awareness of guilt. Like you knew what you had just done was wrong, so you attempted to fix it or conceal it or whatever, and then you don't want that jury instruction on top of whatever it was that brought you into the courthouse in the first place.
So what kind of law do you practice?
I do criminal defense, I do domestic relations / family law, and I do pretty much anything that involves going to the courthouse with a lawyer. That is not, I don't do bankruptcy and I don't do probate work.
Would you say you represent more female or male, or is it about 50-50?
In domestic court, probably maybe more females. Not sure why, but I mean, whoever gets to me with a check first can hire me.
When it comes to child support, do you think the court is more slanted towards females, or do you think that it's fair the way it is?
Well, Tennessee, like many states, has gone to what's called an income shares model. It used to be terribly unfair because it used to be that by and large, mothers got primary custody and fathers paid a set percentage of their income to mom, regardless of mom's income, regardless of any other circumstances. So it was, when I started practicing 30 years ago, it was definitely what I would call unfair. It was heavily slanted towards mothers having custody and getting 21% or more of father's income, regardless of her circumstances. Now it's a much more level playing field. So, and child support in particular is now calculated using mother's income, father's income, and the split of parenting time over a year, as well as daycare and insurance costs. So, both parents' incomes matter. And in fact, the state of Tennessee will assume that you can make a certain minimum income. Now, the one remaining potentially, I guess, unfair thing is that men are presumed to be able to make about $6,000 or $8,000 more a year than women, all things being equal. But that only matters if you don't have a real job or you.
At that point, right? Like they presume they don't care what your circumstance is once they've decided what you can earn. So like if you're a felon and you have a job, the felony doesn't matter, even though that keeps you from getting can keep you from getting a job.
Yeah. So the
right?
floor for the what's called imputed income in Tennessee is about 35,000 for women and about 40,000 for men. That's not exactly right, but and that number only comes into relevance if you don't have a job or if you are voluntarily underemployed. So like, let's say you have a law degree and you've practiced law for 30 years, but you suddenly decide you want to be a drummer for a rock and roll band. Well, that's fine. You can go be a drummer for a rock and roll band, but you're going to pay child support as if you were a lawyer practicing for 30 years. Now, if you have no record of income, like if you're working under the table or whatever, they'll set the floor.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, we got a question in. Funniest incident you ever had in a courtroom that you can share?
There have been a lot. This one I can tell. I had a situation where I was going to probate court. I say I don't do probate. I was doing it for a good friend of mine. So we were going in to probate his mother's will, and this is a solemn occasion where you see the judge and you present the will, and you're there because someone has died, and it's not controversial. It's not a hearing. You're not having a bunch of witnesses come in and argue about anything at this moment. You're merely just opening the probate estate. We get to the courthouse, and for whatever reason, the judge had to leave. So the judge took his docket of like 12 cases and distributed them throughout the courthouse to any judge in the building, because it's a pro forma thing. The judge doesn't need to know anything beforehand. There are no witnesses. There's not a trial. It's just here you go. Thank you. And the judge signs a form and off you go. So the judge sent me and all the other cases to various courtrooms in the courthouse. My client and I got sent down to what I'll call the love docket, which was where everyone in Nashville who had an order of protection case pending that day was in court. So we went from this very solemn and serene courtroom where, lawyers in suits and clients dressed appropriately for court were waiting on a judge, to a circus. And so we walk in, we sit down, it's packed. There are nearly no lawyers in the room because it's order of protection docket. And a lot of the people there didn't think they needed a lawyer or couldn't afford to hire one, whatever. So we walk in, we sit down, and I go up front and sit where I'm entitled to sit because that's what I'm going to do. My client has to sit with everyone there. So he sits down and he starts watching what's going on. And he looks at me and he goes, "Are we in the right place?" And I'm like, "Yeah, we're good." So what's going on at the moment when we were sitting there was this man and this woman were asking for an order of protection against each other. And this judge was letting them just go on. And he was letting them like answer each other and retort and rebut each other. And, it was all, he done this and she done that and blah, 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 blah. And the judge said, finally, "Sir, I'm going to let you get the last word. So if there's anything else you think I need to know about this situation, now's the time to say it. Because after you say what you're going to say, I'm done listening. And I'm going to tell you what the result is." I swear to God, this dude goes up to the podium. He turns around. He looks at everybody in the courtroom. He turns back around. He goes, "Man, asked to see her Instagram, see how much weed they be smoking up in her crib." And the judge was like, "Okay." He said, y'all have got criminal court next week over this same stuff. Both of you got warrants against each other. And they said, "Yeah." And the judge said, "I tell you what, whoever's not in jail when y'all are done doing that, come back and see me. I'll give you the order of protection." Next case.
So did they take him into custody right then?
No, this was just order of protection stuff. But I assume that one of those people went to jail the following week.
Over something else.
Yeah. I mean, fuckery.
Yeah.
Have you ever represented a client that was not guilty?
Oh yeah, that's the hardest thing to do, actually. So representing someone who did it is actually, it's difficult, but it's not. There's not a moral or like emotional crisis. They fucking did it, right? You're just trying to make sure that the state correctly goes through the process and presents the evidence and And with any luck, you might be able to get, you know, a lesser included, a lesser charge, or a more palatable consequence, right? Like, but if you did it, then walking out of the courtroom not guilty with no consequence is a remote possibility, right? Representing the truly not guilty when the state has charged someone with a crime and attempted to convict them and impose consequences on them, and they actually did not do it. Boy, that's hard emotionally and morally, because you know what the right result should be, and the only person that, you know, can influence the outcome is most of the time you. And so it hits harder when a not guilty person goes to court and gets a bad outcome than when a guilty person goes to court and gets a bad outcome.
So what would you say the percentage is guilty to not guilty that you end up representing? Or can you not answer that right now?
No, I can answer that.
Yeah.
Most of the people that get hemmed up in criminal court did something. They may have not done anything in the moment that they got hemmed up, but they were not living a perfectly clean lifestyle most of the time. Mm-hmm. Frequently what I see is that people get overcharged, right? Like they committed crime X, but they get charged with X, Y, Z. And so frequently the process is towards, you know, like, hey, let's try to get back to talking about what you did do, as opposed to all these other charges the state has now run up on you.
Don't they stack those charges just so that you have downward departure for negotiation?
Yeah, a lot of times the government likes to, you know, threaten you with 20 years so you'll take 5. Yes, mm-hmm. That happens a lot.
Yeah. How often do you end up needing to go all the way to trial for a jury like decision versus it pleads out in advance?
Most cases resolved by settlement of one kind or another. That's civil and criminal. Mm-hmm. In criminal cases, if you're trying the case, probably one of a couple of things has happened. Either the facts are really, really bad and the consequence is so bad that the defendant has no choice but to roll the dice. Like, if the best offer I'm going to get is plead guilty and serve 20 years, we'll try the case and just see if see if the state screws something up and you create a mistrial, or some juror just gets hung up on something and doesn't convict and maybe gives you another chance to negotiate a better outcome. But most of the time, cases resolve because they should. And good lawyers, including prosecutors, understand that there's a risk that if you go ask a jury, man, anything can happen. Mm-hmm. So most cases resolve. As a criminal defense lawyer, my job is to beat the offer, right? Like, my job is to get my client what I call the tough choice. If the state charges my client with murder and never offers us anything other than plead guilty and go to prison, well, then my client doesn't have a tough choice. We're just going to go to trial and see what happens. It's when the state comes and says, well, we've indicted your client on first-degree murder, but we would entertain a plea to second degree or voluntary manslaughter with, you know, a sentence of this kind to serve or whatever. That's the tough choice for the client, because if they roll the dice and lose, they're going to catch that, you know, mandatory minimum 25 years or whatever it may be. But nobody likes to sign up and agree to, you know, plead guilty and go to prison. So if the state doesn't make me an offer, well, then I'm just going to try the case. Okay.
Question from Chris Baker. Best advice for a man trying to get 50-50 custody? I will give my advice. Try to get along with the mother as best you can right now. But Dana might have a better
No, I think that's a good starting point. I don't know what jurisdiction this is coming from, but there are a couple factors that I would say you can attempt to influence that'll put you in the best position to get 50-50 custody. One, get along with the mom. Because if you go to court and have all the other issues covered, but you and the mother are bitterly, you know, always in conflict, a judge is going to have a hard time giving you 50-50 custody, because they know that they're just going to see you again. If you can't if you can't get the mom to agree to 50-50 custody, I get it. Many women are reluctant to do that, but you can at least not have unnecessary acrimony. Now, practical logistical suggestions are, depending upon the age of your child, the center of your child's universe is their school and their extracurricular activities. And if you want to go to court and get 50-50 custody, you have to be able to do 50-50 custody. That means you have to live and work close enough and out and during the hours that allow you to perform 50-50 parenting. So you can't be someone who works third shift at the factory and expect to get 50-50 custody. Your children have to go to school. They have to go to Cub Scouts or dance or whatever extracurricular activities. If you are at work all night long, you cannot be a school night parent. So you have to live close enough to be able to perform the functions of delivering children to school and extracurricular activities without long commutes. And you also have to have a work schedule that permits you to perform these parenting schedules. If you have those two things, then you can at least go and say, hey, judge, if you give me the chance, I can do it. Now let me tell you why you should give me the chance. But if you don't have those two things, it doesn't matter what the judge might have done or what you want. I had a pilot come to me one time and he was like, I want 50-50 custody. I was like, show me your schedule. And he's like, well, I only get my schedule, the last day of the month for the next month. I'm like, and how often are you out of town? He's like, oh, I fly Monday through Thursday. I return, I'm home Thursday morning and I go back, I get on a plane at 4:30 in the morning on Monday morning. I'm like, well, how are you going to do 50-50 custody? Like,
do you think most people want 50-50 because they think that negates child support?
People frequently think that it zeroes out child support if they have 50-50 custody. It does not. It might, but that's an arithmetic result, not because you got 50-50. So if you earn twice as much as the other parent and you have 50-50 custody, you're going to pay some child support, at least in Tennessee and probably anywhere else that uses the income shares model. I try not to. I try not to let the tail wag the dog.
Yep.
So you're not representing. I mean, I've seen. I know, Dana, for people that aren't aware, your clients are not typically broke, so you're not necessarily representing hood rats. How many women go after that and don't want joint custody just to punish the man, just to make things difficult? I'm going to take your money. You're not going to see your kid. I would suspect that you don't run into that too much as at the level that you're operating.
It usually comes wrapped this way. I will speak in general terms. Okay. This is not an indictment of one sex or the other. I think that women oftentimes have a hard time, enthusiastically embracing a 50-50 plan. Not all. And increasingly it's women do, but I think there's sort of a built-in reluctance to sign up and agree to 50-50 custody on the part of many women, but it's not so often expressed as because I hate you. It's frequently expressed as you've never been a 50-50 dad. I'm the one who does the homework. I'm the one who goes to the pediatrician. I'm the one who takes the kids to dance lessons. So frequently when a mother opposes it, it's not because she's on the front saying, fuck you. She's saying, you've never done this. You don't even know how. You shouldn't now get the chance. And a lot of times dads are saying, well, that's true, but we're now getting divorced and I've rearranged my life so that I can. And it would be nice if you gave me the chance.
Mm-hmm. This is a follow-up to that. Why can't the pilot hire a nanny? So the person on the road.
The pilot, because a court is never going to look with great favor upon a paid third-party caregiver over the present other parent. In other words, think about what you're saying. You're saying that the child should be put with some paid nanny rather than that child's mother, merely so that the father can claim 50-50 status. that's going to be a real hard sell in front of every judge I practice in front of.
Okay.
Now,
We'll
that's not the same thing as saying that anyone who needs daycare can't be 50-50. That happens a lot. What I'm talking about is like gone overnight 2-3 nights in a row. After school daycare is not an issue, really.
Yeah, it seems like this whole topic works better if the parents go in agreeing on the care plan and are like, this is what we've come up with.
That's always better. And that's always what I try to do. I mean, every kid is better off if their parents can agree upon a plan.
Yeah. And even that can be hard sometimes, but
sure. I mean, and sometimes the problem is the divorce is happening and we're not really sure yet where the parents are going to land. Like there's a chicken and an egg problem that comes up a lot. Like let's say that someone is the primary wage earner and the other one is not. And now post-divorce, the reality is they're going to have to get a job. Well, until they know the outcome of their divorce with perhaps child support and maybe alimony and where their job is, they're probably not going to be able to solve their housing location issue. So you can't necessarily know whether or not a 50-50 plan is doable, because it may be that the parent has to move out of the school zone or even out of the county. So we do have a chicken and an egg problem. So it's sometimes difficult to solve these things that way. Sometimes the parent needs to know, well, how much alimony am I going to get? Well, the other side says, my offer is none or not much. So there's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah. Okay. What does Dana think of a prenuptial agreement? I think this is the last one we have on this topic.
Prenuptial agreements can be useful for someone who is arriving into a marriage with substantial amounts of assets. If you're just two young people getting married, got to start your life, and all you brought was student loans and a couch, a prenup's not going to do you any good.
Hey man, I had a TV too.
Yeah. Okay. You can have your
all
TV,
the difference, right?
Right. If you're talking about a later in life or someone who has stands to inherit or has inherited a substantial amount of money or has built some resources and everything, a prenup can be helpful. But at least in Tennessee, the things that those people accumulate together might not be subject to the division that you would otherwise have wanted to do in a prenup. So a prenup is, you can't just go into a prenup and contract that the exit cost is X and that's it forevermore. That's not going to always work.
How come? It's like, what do you look at for a prenup if you're going?
Well, because the definition of marital property, at least in Tennessee, is for example, let's say that you have a house when you get married. Okay. Mm-hmm. The definition of marital property is going to include the increase in the value of that house occurring during the marriage if you contributed to its upkeep, maintenance, or even overhead. So you can't always just say, well, it's my house that even though it became worth twice as much during this marriage, I get it all back, because the law of Tennessee at least says, well, somebody contributed, like paid the utility bills or vacuumed or built a deck or whatever. And that's not nothing.
Okay. So what I'm hearing you say is even if you have that in a prenup, the Tennessee law trumps it.
That's right. There's only so much you can contract out of without running afoul of the law. Okay.
Well, speaking of Trump, you're going to love this one. What's your legal opinion on Trump's indictments? You don't have to answer that if you don't want to.
No, it's okay. Let me confess, I haven't read them. I think this is mostly kabuki theater. He's not being indicted by Republicans in Republican districts. He's being indicted by Democrats all over with the most scandalous thing they can say. Let me quickly add, I did not vote for Trump, Biden, or Clinton. None of those people should be president, in my opinion. I guess the question to me, legally, do they have the proof? Maybe. It wouldn't surprise me to learn that Trump it's easy to commit crimes when you're a public figure that you don't even know about. It's even easier to commit crimes when you don't care what the law is. What is the game plan here? I don't know. I mean, it seems to me that politically they're hyper charging Trump's sympathizers with motivation to continue defending and advocating for him by making him a martyr. At the same time, is anyone going to abandon him merely because he's now been indicted? No.
Yeah, no. The people who are behind him are behind him.
Yeah, that's proven to be the case. And, I get it. I mean, he's given his middle finger to the establishment. And he says brash, things to the enemy. I think it's a tragic comment on the state of our empire and the state of our democracy that all of this is going on. I look back at it historically and say that every president since Reagan, or maybe even before that, has faced a special counsel, special prosecutor who got put on the job 10 minutes after the inauguration, and their only purpose of their investigation was to tear down the presidency. I think that's a terrible indictment of our system.
Yeah, it seems like the weaponization of the courts over my lifetime has amplified, and I don't know if that's just I noticed it more as I got older, or if it's
it's gone from rough and tumble politics to $1,500 an hour lawyers trying to disrupt your candidacy or your tenure in office. It's not. I think the problem is that we keep the system keeps allowing detestable human beings to come to the top as candidates. In my opinion, if this whole country doesn't have better candidates than Joe Biden, Donald Trump, and Hillary Clinton, then we're doomed. Show me the public servant. Show me the virtuous leader, the person who didn't really want the job but was willing to take it because they'd be good at it. I don't see that in our culture today, and look, I served in public office for 24 years. I ran 6 elections and was 6-0 in elections, and I walked away from it because even at the municipal level, the amount of bullshit and personal attacks and slander that I faced, even serving on city council, was more than I was willing to put up with. So I walked away from it, and it's not vain. Well, it's vain, but it's true. I was really good at it. I did a really good job for my city, and I was unwilling to keep doing it. So it's not surprising to me that
people don't end up at that level, right? Because
I mean, if you want to be, theoretically, the training ground, the path forward to the governor's office is get yourself elected to local office, and then get yourself elected to state legislature, and then get yourself, on the ballot to be the governor. In other words, learn the job, right? Ideally, we would be having people with some experience and expertise in government running for the jobs. If I'm unwilling to continue serving as a city councilman because of the bullshit that I had to put up with at that level, then I assure you I'm never going to run for state house or state senate or governor. No way. It's not worth the aggravation and time. So what you wind up with is self-financed billionaires and political Machiavellian characters getting to Washington. So it's no surprise to me that we see what we see.
Yeah, it seems like the whole system's been set up that way for a while. Next question. How would you go about removing a person from your group who is a neighbor and knows things? That's kind of cryptic.
You mean like exile someone who is in your circle and now you don't want them in?
I
but
mean,
they
that's how
know
I'm
things?
taking it, and I don't know what they know, but
We
I
know
don't
what
think
they
they
know.
need to feed them to the pigs.
What that means to Dana and I is completely different from what you're taking from this, Nicole.
Okay.
I mean, my policy is that the penalty for treason is exile. And
that means feed them to the pigs.
Figuratively speaking.
You would never advocate for such a thing on a public platform, right?
That's right.
That's right. I'm not going to recommend felonies.
Yeah, that's smart. That's smart. Have you ever referenced the hot crazy matrix in the courtroom?
I don't think so, but every judge I'm in front of with any regularity is aware of it. So, and I'm always a clown anyway. So,
you need to put a page together that's the fuck around, find out. Like they're doing.
Yeah,
it's hot. You should be the one doing it,
man.
I could just feed them to you every day. I'll feed you one. You build the 30-second content.
I've come to the conclusion that social media, for me, is poison, so I have elected to vacate the space.
And that is that. So you're not going to do it, is what you're saying?
Not even for money. I mean,
and you like money.
I love money, but it's just for the same reason that I left public office, being a briefly famous public figure on the internet also got tiring. And so I prefer to, every morning I sit in that chair and read those books. And that's a productive and peaceful thing for me to do. If I were to try to chase social media fame again, I would be spending time trying to gain the attention and approval of people that don't really give a shit about me.
So when we met, you were not in the shape you're in now. You want to
physically?
Let's talk about that journey and that progression. What the catalyst to that, and then the movement towards it.
So when John and I met, I was
at a urinal.
That's
we were
right.
Both peeing in the same urinal.
That's right. And as I recall, it was like you told
same
me.
Urinal. Wait a second. Let's back up.
Yes, like this.
So,
like, hey,
I think we were both at what used to be, what was that place at the time, John? It's now the Country Western. At the time,
it was the Italian place.
It was some other iteration of that location. Anyway, in 2010, January 2010, I woke up and realized that I was fat. I found that out by going in the closet to put on the same pants that I'd worn for some time, and they were tight. And I thought, well, these pants shrunk. And then I thought, no, they didn't. And I remember this all went through my mind really fast. Like, well, damn, these pants shrunk. And then I was like, no, they didn't. You've gotten fat. You've outgrown your pants. And then I realized, and then I quickly said to myself, well, I'm not giving up and buying fat pants. I'm 42 years old. I'm not going to do that. So I decided, well, I guess I'll get in shape. So this was a difficult moment for me because in my head, I was still the athlete, the pretty good athlete that I had been previously in life. The reality was that 15 or 20 years at a desk had changed all that. It was so I started going to the gym and doing all the things. About 6 months later, I had a heart attack and I was dead for 5 minutes. And I got it. I was really lucky. A series of things that just were completely fortuitous kept me from staying dead that night. And so for the last, 13 years, I've been on an autodidactic journey to be the best version of me that I can, because it is unfair to ask my wife to watch me die twice. So I've spent the last 13 years consistently attempting to improve myself, and I've experimented with any number of different nutrition protocols and fitness and strength and conditioning things. I've done a lot of different things, and I can say with confidence that at 55 today, I am a way better animal than I was 13 years ago, or 15 years ago, or even probably 20 years ago.
What advice would you give to the people who are like, but I can't? John hates it when I ask this question.
No, that's okay. I think, okay, so you have to start where you are, and you have to do what you can. And that's real simple, but you are where you are, and you need to be honest with yourself. And you have at your disposal what you have at your disposal. It does not require inordinate amounts of time and money to improve your fitness. So what I would say is, step one is go to the doctor and get your blood work, weight, and all that. Just start with that. Just get the raw data and start with that, right? And accept that data for what it is, because it's probably going to, it could very well be shockingly unpleasant to you to learn that you are, that you weigh X. I remember that when I put those pants on and they didn't fit anymore, people say, well, how much did you weigh? And I say, I don't know. Fat people don't get on scales a lot. So I can guess what I weighed. But honestly, I wasn't paying much attention to it. So start with getting the baseline data. Then as far as the things that you can do, the behavior modifications that you can do differently. Number one, fix your sleep. If you don't fix your sleep, nothing else will matter. So you have to be deliberate and conscientious about your sleep. That means you need to have a good sleep regimen and take care of that. Like, be intentional about that. So that means, for example, start by in the morning when you wake up, go out in the sun with your face in the sun, with no glass or polarized glasses or UV blockers in between you and the sun. Get your face into the sun every morning when you wake up for about 10 to 15 to 30 minutes. What that does is it starts a chemical process in your body that tells your body, okay, the clock for today has started. And that means that at the end of the day, your body will say, time to go to bed, dummy. If you delay that or don't do it at all, if you stay indoors and you're only exposed to incandescent lights and whatnot, your body chemistry will inevitably start to slide into vampire status, because your body won't know that it's daylight, right? Like, human beings have lived on this planet as Homo sapiens for something about 300,000 years. We are adapted to live on this planet under this sun. If you fight that using electricity and television and phones and all, if you allow yourself to slide off of the circadian rhythm of the planet, or if you intentionally do it, you will suffer. So fix your sleep, go to bed not long after dark, and get up not long after sunrise and put your face in the sun. Fix your sleep. Get rid of screens and devices and stress inducing things at least 2 hours before you try to go to bed. Put your phone down, put your laptop away, get away from your TV, read a book, and then go to bed and go to sleep. Second, I would say hydrate. You have to be intentional about this too. Most people probably walk around chronically under or dehydrated or underhydrated. Rule of thumb would be 1 ounce per pound of weight per day, 1 ounce per, say, 2 pounds of weight per day. So if you weigh 200 pounds, try to get 100 ounces. I would say 100 ounces as a floor every day. That's what I do, is I drink at least 100 ounces of water or water equivalent a day. Don't drink anything in a can. Get away from diet soda, caffeinated drinks. Get away from all that stuff. Anything in a can is probably not a good plan. And then go for a walk. Go outside and walk. And you can, if you are obese and in terrible shape, walk 5 minutes out and 5 minutes back, and just keep doing that until you can do 10 out and 10 back, and keep doing that until you can do 20 out and back. and build up your ability to sustain walking for an hour. Once you can walk for an hour, you can start to think about adding some other things in. But until you can literally walk 30 minutes away from your home and 30 minutes back, you might not want to try anything more advanced than that. I know that that's slow going and it may be demoralizing, but that's a fact. If you can't walk 30 minutes in each direction, I don't recommend that you think about getting on a treadmill or a rowing machine or any of that. Once you can do that, or if you can do that today, great. Still go out and walk at least 3 days a week for an hour or more. Add in strength and resistance, like picking up heavy things and putting them down. That can take any number of forms, machines, free weights, whatever you want to do, but you should be strength training. And then probably once a week, do something high intensity for, 15 to 20 minutes. Get your heart rate redlined, maybe once a week. And if you want to buy one book and read it and know what, and have all of this kind of condensed and put into one place for you, I recommend Peter Attia's book, Outlive. It's new this year. And nothing that I've just said is anything I invented. It's what I've experimented with and then gone to the experts, and the experts have confirmed and refined my approach to this. So fix your sleep, drink enough water, go for a walk, and then add strength and conditioning.
There's a link, guys, to that book if you're interested in reading it.
That's it.
I think if you have money and you're terribly out of shape, all of those things are great. And if you can afford to have somebody or take some classes or pay somebody to coach you through getting to a level of fitness, that can really help with motivation when you have something
on how you work, right? Like everything I just said is by and large either free, completely free, or very cheap. If you can buy TRX straps and one kettlebell, you can improve yourself indefinitely with $200 worth of stuff delivered from Amazon. After that, you can certainly buy yourself a home gym and whatever else you think you want. You're going to have, at some point, you're just going to have to decide that it's important. And, John, Nicole, and me, we all have the same 24 hours a day. No one's getting merely 20 hours a day. We get 24. How do you want to use them? And I would say, like, as like a mindset issue, find a why. Okay. Find a why that is big enough to change the status quo and the momentum that has gone in the wrong direction for you. So most of the time that people are dissatisfied with their strength and conditioning situation, it is because they have allowed a series of bad habits to be stacked upon one another for a prolonged period of time. You're going to have to find a why that is big enough to change the momentum and the status quo. For me, the why was I watched my wife watch me die. I did not want that to happen again. It was heartbreaking and it was excruciating to know that I was that close to leaving a widow with teenage sons. So my why was presented to me in a very stark, sudden way. So I have committed that my wife will never have to watch me die again if I can help it. I'll watch her die. I owe her one, right? But your why might merely be because you want to be able to get on the roller coaster when you take your kid to, the theme park. Your why might be you just want to be able to look decent in the photographs at your daughter's wedding. Your why might be anything. I don't know what it's going to be for you, but it needs to be big enough to change your behavior.
Yeah. It's funny because I recently had to deal with my attitude problem about making time to exercise. And it took an everyday commitment for me. And I had to do it every day for a long time for it to really be like, if I don't work out now, I'm like, oh, it's been a bad day for me. Because it's like, if I have time to schedule a meal, then I have time to schedule a workout. That's sort of how I saw it.
Yeah. And I mean, I get it. There's people that work 12-hour shifts and there's a whole lot of headwind. That's true. So you're just going to have to figure out what your why is. And then, one of the things I've added to my why is one of my best friends, James, died almost a year ago. and he went down swinging, man. And he fought and lived a good life and fought that to the bitter end. And I've got one of his patches that says your responsibility to be ready for the fight never ends. And it's pinned up over my dresser. And every morning I look at that and I think, man, you know, he doesn't have that. He doesn't have that opportunity anymore, but I still do. So.
All right. Speaking of James, what's your last tactical response class, and are they still on the cutting edge of tracking?
I'm gonna assume that they may have meant training.
Training, yeah. I was like,
my last class there, I helped teach a fighting pistol class not long ago. The curriculum at Tactical Response, in particular, the fighting pistol classes and the force on force classes are. Well, I'll say this. I've been to a lot of name brand instructors, and I wholeheartly recommend Tactical Response's curriculum and instructors. I receive no financial benefit from saying that. I've trained with a lot of different name brand instructors, and many of those name brand instructors come to Tactical Response and take fighting pistol. More than once. So whether you believe some guy you may have never heard of or not, there are name brand instructors who've come through Tactical Response and taken even the, let's say, entry class. And if you've never taken fighting pistol, then to be blunt, if you've never taken fighting pistol, you are not entitled to have an opinion about Tactical Response. Go take fighting pistol, and then we'll talk.
It's funny because I just took fighting pistol and was very impressed. And of course, that resulted in the CrossFit factor with me, where I'm like, everybody I meet who's like, I don't know about my gun. I'm like, oh, go take fighting pistol. I don't know if I can do this. Oh, go take fighting pistol. And they're like, are you sure? That might be too hardcore for me. And I'm like, listen, no. I went in there and I thought my problem was that I didn't like how my gun felt in my hand. And I tried a bunch of different guns while I was there. And I came out of fighting pistol not caring what gun I carry.
Then it worked.
Right. So I'm like, it's not, that was just sort of like my excuse at that point. And sure, I actually have sort of come to the conclusion about, I think is more comfortable, but.
Yeah, the thing about going somewhere like Tactical Response is it's very similar to walking into a jiu-jitsu gym, right? The thing that keeps most people from doing it is their ego. They have a perception of their skill and ability level, and they know that if they go somewhere like fighting pistol or jiu-jitsu class, that their perception may be destroyed instantly, and that they will then understand the world as it actually is and not the world in which they fantasized about their skills and abilities. And quite honestly, it doesn't matter what gun you have or you bring or any of the rest of that stuff. It's a fighting class that happens to have a pistol as the tool in that particular class. Now that said, children, handicapped, people with immutable characteristics that were significant physical disadvantages have successfully taken fighting pistol. And at fighting pistol class, no one is going to scream in your face. No one is going to belittle you. None of those things are going to happen. You're going to be given every opportunity to leave way better than you arrived. And if you don't, it's because of you.
Yeah, I was impressed with that class. I'm coming back on Labor Day, actually, to do it again.
I've personally taken fighting pistol at least 20 times.
Yeah, I will take other classes there too, but I think I might take it in a dress this time.
My specific advice about going to Tactical Response fighting pistol is come to class however you walk around during the day in your community. So if you walk around like me, either in a suit if I'm going to court or in, like shorts and a t-shirt, if that's how you walk around in your community in your average day, come to class like that. The mistake I see people make is they come to class and they put on all this Gucci gear that they never otherwise would wear unless they were given an hour's notice of their next gunfight. And they're doing themselves a disservice, because you're at fighting pistol, you're going to get multiple reps of getting a pistol out of however you carry it and employed in the business at hand. And if you come to class in a whole set of battle belt, Gucci gear, this, that, and the other, and that's not how you walk around, I mean, okay, fine, but you're not doing yourself as much good. Now, if you're a police officer or security guard or someone else who walks around with a whole belt of kit, come like that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking to do it in a dress because that's 25% of my life. And
you should train how you train how you would fight.
Thing, right?
Yeah. You should train how you will fight.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm looking forward to being back there and checking that out. And anybody who has not checked it out, that's tacticalresponse.com. We do have a question. Do you have your own personal website, Dana?
My law office is danamcclendonlaw.com. If you want to contact me or whatever.
I'll make sure to put that in the show notes.
I don't have any kind of a like, I've thought about doing like a blog or something like that that's got little or nothing to do with law and just sort of the things that I talk about when I'm with people like you guys and the people that find us and hang around with us. I've thought about doing that. And if I could just think it and make it so, I would, but it's a time constraint for me. And I also am, I'm not entirely convinced that what I have to tell is all that useful to people, but maybe it is. I don't know.
Now, once you start saying it, that's when you find out.
Right. So maybe one day.
Yeah. You're going to speak at SRF in October, right?
Yeah.
Do you know what you're going to talk about?
I don't.
I have a request for you, and it's kind of a weird one, but somebody said, can you get him to talk about girls and guns?
Girls and guns?
Part of it, like girls and guns. Because we're doing Girl Gun Weekend on Labor Day.
Yeah.
And a lot of women are still hesitant to come out.
Yeah, I think, I mean, having taught and taken as many gun classes as I have, I think here's what I've seen. I've seen a lot of women that come because the dude that they're involved with basically made them, right? Like, and they frequently, and that can be hard because they don't know what to expect. They don't have a lot of confidence. They didn't necessarily want to come. They did it because it was like the best solution to a problem they didn't invent. Most of the time, what happens is if they come to tactical response and take fighting pistol, most of those women leave much more comfortable and much more confident with the situation than they arrived. No one there. It's not. Believe me, it is not some bunch of creepy dudes, plotting the overthrow of the government, and it's dentists and soccer moms, and if you come to tactical response and you have the least bit of, or even if you are averse to learning about guns, the one thing that will not happen is you will not be ostracized or ridiculed or approached inappropriately or any of that stuff. Someone asked a question earlier about what do you do when you want someone out of your circle? We fucking ban you. If you misbehave towards a woman that has come to be among us, you will be banned quick. But most of the time it's a fear of the unknown that is the there and once the unknown is no longer unknown, the fear dissipates naturally. We will take you as you come, and you will learn, hey, if you're a soccer mom and the best way you can carry is this away, we're going to work with that. What we also will do, if you come with some dude that you're involved with, he will not have one bit of instruction for you during the class. We will separate you from him and send him far, far away. So sometimes the very best thing we can do for a woman coming to one of our classes is get them away from the dude that brought them. Yeah. Because it's very hard to teach someone that you sleep with anything. Really. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm an old skier, and our rule was boyfriends and girlfriends do not teach each other how to ski.
That's right.
Yeah.
There's too much going on there.
Yeah. Because too many fights. So this is not a question framed, but it sort of is. This is a question like, can you talk to how to properly carry if you also are a mom with kids around all the time? So the fear there is they're going to get the gun.
Yeah, I get that. By far, no question about it, the best way for you, a woman or a man, to carry is on their person. I'm not a big fan of what we call off-body carry, like bags or purses or satchels or any of that stuff. If that's the only way you can do it, okay. I mean, I guess, but frequently the target of a crime is going to be the bag, the satchel, the purse. I don't want the gun in it too. The thief or robber may have only been willing to take your bag to find out what's in it. And if you put a gun in it and then they get the bag, that's a bonus. They were willing to steal it just so they could get the wallet, the credit card, or the cash. So I don't love off-body carry. These days, there are many, many ways for, in particular, a woman to carry a gun on her person. Now, the reality is this. For women, it can be a little more difficult to simultaneously dress as cute as you might like and carry a gun on your person. That's a reality. I'm going to leave it up to you to balance those things. But these days, belly bands, holsters, the gun market has realized that half of the potential consumers are women, and that women want to be able to both dress cute and carry a gun. So there's a lot of options out there. Not all of them are as optimized for the gun part of the equation as for the cute part of the equation. But this is a personal decision that you can make, but there's lots of options. So women worried about carrying around children, I would say this, I get it. But I would also pose this question. I would much rather you let us help you learn how to solve the problem of carrying a gun while having your children present with you than have you regret that you did not have a gun when you needed it most to protect those children.
Yeah, and to circle back on the lady carry thing, because that's been a big focus for me for the last few months. Your waist will never look as small as it really is. That's the vanity problem, and I don't care. When I asked a friend, and I won't say who it is, what she carried, which kind of gun, because I print pretty bad with mine. Her answer had nothing to do with the gun. To this day, I don't know what she carries. But she told me what she did with her clothes.
Right.
And that made a big difference. Like I've started, I have a second shirt I can put on over my shirt if I'm like somewhere where I really don't want it to be quite as obvious. So it's just sort of like an open button down thing. That works pretty well. It's like throwing a jacket on.
And, look, there are days that I carry in one of John's fupas,
Yes.
that can work. That's a viable solution. And, and it's not my favorite way, but there are times and places where that's an option and it works.
Yeah. Okay. I do want to highlight this one just because I am very excited for this person. Works a 12-hour night shift and has lost 80 pounds in the last year because he or she made time.
Yeah. Depending upon what your goals are, right. You have to focus on, you can't do everything all at once. Okay. Probably trying to do everything all at once is potentially setting you up to fail all of the above, which is discouraging. So I would say, set yourself up to get small wins because small wins add up to big wins. If your primary focus at the moment is weight loss, then you must fix your nutrition. You cannot out-train a fork. You cannot ride a Peloton sufficiently to overcome the fact that you eat a pint of ice cream every night. It can't be done. So if your primary issue is that you want to take weight off, then prioritize nutrition, prioritize sleep, hydration, and nutrition, and add a walk. It's not easy to both get stronger, build strength, put on muscle, and cut fat. It can be done, but that's a much more narrow gate to get through than, hey, I just want to lose 100 pounds because that's what I need to do. If you need to lose 100 pounds, fix your sleep, fix your hydration, fix your nutrition, and go for walks, and it'll happen. Because the good news is this: the worse off that you are in fitness and conditioning, the more impact even nominal behavioral changes will have. So if you've been drinking 6 Coca-Colas and eating McDonald's 2 times a day for 3 years and you weigh an extra 150 pounds as a result, then if you just stop going to McDonald's, stop drinking sodas, fix your sleep, and go for walks, you're going to start losing weight straight away.
Don't yell at a clown to order food.
I agree 100%. That's a funny way to say it. What I tell people is, do not drive past a building where they can throw 10,000 calories through your car window.
Yeah. Yeah. I carry a bag of food now when I travel, and it's just things that are on the approved list, all whole foods. Never a stuck somewhere making, decision between don't eat or bad decision.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
I would say this. I've competed in wrestling and jiu-jitsu in weight classes starting when I was 13, 14 years old. So I've lost weight, made weight many different ways. Many of them were terrible ways. I've also done nutrition and weight management a lot of different ways. There is not a universal answer for everyone because of your metabolism, your life, your situation. I mean, it's harder to manage your nutrition when you're also feeding a 5-year-old, right? Like if you're feeding a 5-year-old, it's a little bit harder to eat broccoli and chicken every meal. That's just a fact. But what you do need to do is find what works for you and apply it consistently. And realize that as far as weight loss and nutrition goes, that however long it took you to get to the position you're at, it probably will take that long to get back. So if you see a picture of yourself 4 years ago and that's what you want to weigh now, it might realistically take you 4 years to get back to that in a way that's healthy and sustainable.
Yeah, and the sustainability is, I've been talking about, I'm at my dad's house right now, so I've been talking to him a lot about that. He lost 40 pounds in the last 4 years. And he said, I don't know what's different. I said, you retired and now you're consistent. That's it. You're just not, right. You're not going hurdy-gurdy. Okay. This is off topic, but we need a new topic anyway.
Okay.
Do you know what the Tennessee law is about central bank digital currencies at all?
I do not.
Okay.
I have no idea.
But you know what that is?
Vaguely. Yes.
Yes.
So I don't know what the Tennessee law is.
Wrong person to ask, right?
Yeah, that's outside of that's not in my lane. So I'm going to let someone else who knows more about that answer that question at another time.
I can say this at Self-Reliance Festival. If you ask about CBDCs when Jack Spirko is talking, you'll probably get a lot of information. And I actually have one other person in the works who may have some insights on CBDCs, which a lot of people are talking about right now. I think I don't know how we avoid going there. They've already said.
I mean, the progression seems inevitable, right? Once upon a time, you traded, wheat and rice and silks and spices, and then fiat money came along and it had the emperor's face on it. It was gold or silver or whatever, and that became impractical, and so we created paper money. And I think the evolution towards digital currency is inevitable.
Can you speak to the costs of carrying after an event? These days, it seems the law is against the person defending themselves. I think they mean after having to have used their gun once as an event. I don't know.
The costs are going to be a lot. If you have been charged with a crime that involves that you displayed or used a firearm, your costs are likely to be many thousands of dollars, depending upon what the charge was, where it was, and whether anyone was hurt or not. My advice is find the person who is me wherever you live before it happens. Jail is a lousy place to try to find a lawyer from. So my advice is you don't, and people are like, what's your retainer? I haven't done anything. I just want to, my retainer for something that hasn't happened is nothing. Put my number in your phone and hope you never have to call me. That's the retainer. Okay. But you can find a me wherever you live, and you should, before it matters.
Yeah. And there are insurance policies. Can you talk a little bit about how those work?
Yeah. So okay, let me just start with this. As a lawyer, I think most insurance policies are a racket, up until you need one. And then it's too late to buy one, right? Like every day, the bet that the insurance company makes is that they will not pay, and you bet that they will, right? If I buy life insurance, I'm betting I die, and they're betting that I won't until my policy is no longer available, right? So the same thing is true for every insurance policy, and every insurance policy has a provision in it that talks about the reservation of rights. And that is where the insurance company says, okay, you have this policy and you have a phone number and you call when the thing happens. And then we will immediately begin doing the things that we said we would do, but we're going to do all of that under what's called a reservation of rights, which means if it turns out that we eventually don't have to pay, then we're not going to. And so I have not read every different company's insurance policy. But if you are looking at buying one, you need to be aware that some of them are going to say, we will pay for your lawyer up until the moment in time when you plead or are found guilty of a crime, in which case we are going to withdraw the lawyer and come to you for all the money we have previously paid out. Now, if you wind up in jail charged with discharging a weapon crime, it is better that you get a me in the mix immediately rather than not. And if the way for you to do that is to have one of those policies, good. Because I've been on the list of those companies. I'm not going to name names or anything because I'm not paid to do that. But if you have one of those policies and you call them, they will FedEx me the check that I asked for right away, and then I'm on the job. If it turns out in 6 months or a year that things went badly and you now owe the insurance company that money back, quite honestly, that's probably not your biggest problem anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's important for people to know. I was talking to my dad this morning and I said, the best thing I learned at class was that if I discharge a firearm and harm somebody in self-defense, I'm going to jail.
Oh, if you shoot someone at the stop and rob, you're going to jail. Mm-hmm. Now, you may or may not be charged with a crime then and there or later. But if the cops come to a scene where you shot someone, you are going to be put in custody. They are not going to pin a medal on you and take you down to meet the mayor and proclaim tomorrow Nicole Sauce Day. That is not going to happen. You are going to be in a system, in a process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's hard for people to wrap their heads around because they've seen so many movies about the good guys. It's like
it's worse than that.
They don't care right now. They care about.
It's worse than that.
Yeah.
Most people I don't want to say most, many people that carry a gun, and I will admit before I say this that once upon a time this was me. Many people who carry a gun have a narrative in their head where they're the good guy and they do the heroic thing and everything turns out perfectly. They won the gunfight. It was clearly a good shoot, and they get a medal, and they get to go on Tucker Carlson and talk about Second Amendment rights. People should abandon that ridiculous narrative. It's not going to happen. If you shoot someone in self-defense, it is not always going to be immediately evident that it was a self-defense case. It's frequently going to be cloudy, and this is to say nothing about the political environment of the circumstances wherein that happened. So if you carry a gun and you get it out or show it to someone or shoot someone with it, you should have a plan that you have already created for how you get out of jail and get into my office.
Yeah, the only person
you're going to need that plan
personally who got involved as the good guy and stopped a mass shooting in process. I don't know if somebody hasn't told me about it who I know, but the only person I know is dead. and they are dead because he still had his gun in his hand when the police arrived. And all the police knew was there was an active shooter. Now he annihilated the threat, like that was done, but he also died. That's the price he paid.
Yeah. You know, when the police come, keep this in mind. And I have many law enforcement officers as friends, so this is not a disparaging remark about any and all law enforcement officers. Their first priority is go home. And if they have to shoot someone that it turns out to be a mistake later, well, that's terrible and that's tragic, and they'll suffer consequences and guilt and everything else. But every police officer I know, the first order of business for them is go home at the end of the shift. Okay. And second is don't get fired for failing to do the job as well as they could, which it's easy for a police officer to write a ticket or arrest someone and write a warrant and then let the DA figure out later that no crime, no big deal. But it's not likely that the police officer on the scene is going to stick his neck out and his career out and say, I don't see anything wrong here. On your way, sir. Have a nice day. And then have some DA later second guess that. That's not, if you're a police officer and your choices are put the shooter in cuffs and take him to the jail and let the other people figure it out later, or tell that person, good job, dude. Nice shot. Have a good day. It's obvious what's going to happen.
Yeah. Okay. Do you only practice in Tennessee, Dana?
I am licensed in Tennessee on a case-by-case basis. I could be admitted what's called pro hoc vice in some other state, but I would need to be sitting next to a local lawyer to do it.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. All right. John, tell us about your shirt.
Second Amendment. That's literally what it says. It says the Second Amendment. And then it has the Second Amendment on the back of it.
So just in case you guys don't know the exact words, you can get a t-shirt at originalsoegear.com and it will come to you. If you still have any. You released that Monday, right?
Yeah.
So cops get a call, someone with a gun is shooting. They don't know if it's a good guy or a bad guy, 100%.
What they're going to do when they get there is secure the situation and disarm everyone who isn't in uniform.
Mm-hmm.
First.
And then we go from there. All right. Well, we're rounding out about an hour and 15. I don't know how much time you have, Dana. How are you looking?
I'm good.
You're good? John, are you good?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's move on to another fun topic for Dana. What is your favorite coffee and why?
Coffee?
Yeah, like kind of coffee. I'm not looking for a whole roast thing here because I don't think that's
okay. So my current source of coffee is a roasting company that is in Kentucky. I've found their coffee to be really good, and they ship it to me, and it arrives to me very quickly. I personally like a light roast. I do a pour over every morning, so I hand grind with a ceramic burr grinder coffee, and I make a pour over. As far as like varietals and whatnot, it depends. My palate, I prefer sort of a caramel molasses chocolate type flavor. Although right now I'm currently working my way through a bag of Ethiopian, which is a little more citrus and fruit. So I don't eat pizza every day. I don't eat steak every day. I don't know exactly what I'm going to like on any given day. So right now in the house, I've probably got a bag of, I know I've got a bag of Ethiopian, and I've got a bag of like 2 bags from Central South America. Light to medium roast is my favorite profile. I know what I like. I don't offer myself as an expert on the subject matter, but I would say this. If you take shitty beans and roast them dark, it's hard to tell. And what I've seen is that if you start with really good beans, I don't know why you would really dark roast them, because then you maybe given away the advantage of starting out with really good beans. Nicole, you may be able to speak to that, but I personally I make a pour over and I drink it black. I think if you're going to put a bunch of cream and sugar in it, then just get fucking garden variety coffee and rock on.
Yeah, I think the roast, the darker you get, the flavors that come out are more consistently the same across bean varieties. There's a little bit of difference, but it's more about the flavor profile that the roast brings out. So like if I slow down how high the temperature raises in the middle, I get more chocolate and caramel when I end up at that late roast. So that is correct. The darker you get, the less you're tasting the bean. And then on the lighter side, you're tasting more like what that soil added to the bean, what the elevation added to the bean, and those things.
And I prefer that.
Yeah.
Because I'm not putting anything in it. I'm going to drink it. I'm going to make it the same way, and I'm going to drink it black every time.
Yeah.
But that's a palate thing, right? Like there's plenty of people that are like, light roast does nothing for them. They want it dark, dark, dark. And okay.
I'm a more of a dark roast person. Some varietals I like lighter because they are that good, but I don't like the citrus, the more like citrusy acid flavor that I taste in a lighter roast most of the time.
Yeah. It's it's a palate thing. So I like the way I've gotten to the point, I think, where I can tell the difference between them. Like I could probably go downstairs and blind taste test the several bags that I have and correctly get which one was which. But my wife, she's going to make a K-cup and put a bunch of fucking sugar and cream in it. I'm like, she's like, will you make me a cup? Not of this shit. I'm not. No, you're just going to pour a bunch of camouflage in it. So no, you cannot have the expensive stuff. You can have the K-cup from Publix.
I see. Oh, so you have a K-cup machine too.
That's hers.
Uh-huh.
I have a Chemex for me.
They have a prenup about coffee making paraphernalia, right? There's a division in the kitchen.
That's right.
Yeah. It's a lot of people think it's not manly if your coffee's not roasted dark. Okay. And I kind of was that way too. Like it won't be good if it's not dark. I was raised in the Pacific Northwest. I don't know where that came from. And then I started learning about coffee, and it kind of opened up to me like wine did 20 years ago.
Right.
Where the wines I like may not be the wines that the wine connoisseurs like, but I was over time able to taste differences and start getting regions and that sort of thing out of.
Sure. I mean, the analogy might be dark coffee is kind of a really heavy cab.
Yeah.
And light roast is more maybe down at the Pinot end of the spectrum. Maybe not coincidentally, I prefer Pinot to cab, but
it's like it was meant to be. If we do a full collapse, how quickly do you think we will have some sort of court system?
I think that as long as there are 5 people on the planet, 1 will be a judge, 2 will be lawyers, and 2 will be suing each other. Eventually, the shooting would stop, and we would need some sort of non-shooting mechanism to resolve conflict. If the shooting never stops, then we'll never have a courthouse again. So,
yeah,
I think you have
that's
to hope
the least of our worries if the shooting.
I think you have to hope that we always have a functioning judicial system, because if we don't, then we have really jumped the shark.
How close do you think the United States has been to seeing the shooting?
Man, I remember, it's weird to think about it this way now, but I remember as we slid into the pandemic and then bam, we hit that, whatever it was, March 13th, 2020, stay home order type thing. And I remember feeling a very powerful sense of existential dread. And I remember thinking, my concern is that either the grid fails or the food trucks stop. Because if the grid fails or the food trucks stop, we are on a countdown, and it's measurable in days before people start doing dumb shit. If the food trucks and the electricity don't work, then we are looking at a countdown of days, not weeks or months, before people start doing stupid shit. And the infrastructure managed to stay intact, and the existential dread that I was feeling sort of mitigated a little bit. But then we got into that summer where these metropolitan areas were being burned to the ground. And then something really scary happened. And it was that people started taking to the streets armed with rifles, flying one flag or another and shooting at each other. And there were several examples and instances where someone underneath this flag shot and killed someone who was underneath this flag. And I remember thinking, oh shit, this was an isolated incident. But if 20 or 30 of the people flying that flag intentionally show up where 20 or 30 people flying that flag are, and they brought rifles, this shit could go south in a hurry. And that's the kind of thing that could be contagious, because CNN would spread it like a fucking virus. And I remember thinking, man, we are really close to one of these urban, suburban, class-based, flyover country, coastal conflicts where people are scared and hyped, and now they're showing up in organized, semi-organized units with rifles and shooting at the people who are underneath that other flag. And man, if it had gone, I think we were right at the tipping point where some really ugly shit could have happened real soon.
Almost
I
like
never
that's
thought
a
the next
game plan.
Civil War was going to start where I grew up, but that's where it was going to start that summer.
Man, it was really sketchy for a little while. I started thinking about, what does that look like if it spills over into Nashville? I live outside Nashville in an affluent community. If the shit jumps off in Nashville, will there be pockets? Will there be groups of people in cars rolling up into the suburbs? And I mean, there aren't enough police to deal with that. And fortunately, we managed to not go further down that path. But for a while, man, I remember it was like Antifa shot and killed some guy who was supposedly underneath. I say flying flags. I mean, we had the Antifa crowd, and we had the Proud Boys / Patriots / whatever you want to call it. I mean, whatever. They were intentionally starting to find each other in the streets, and the police were not able to manage that. And that's the kind of thing that could have really jumped off and gone badly.
John, what were you going to say? Or is it gone?
It's by design. It's the game plan. I mean, one side is actually financed to show up. One side has handlers with radios and earpieces. I mean, it's even unraveling right now as we speak. There's more evidence coming forward to those things, and I think you're going to see exactly the same thing, but amplified right before this next election.
Yeah, that's kind of what, going back to what we were talking about earlier, this Trump thing, man. I mean, part of me wants to say, well, look, let the evidence, let the system play out, and let the system work, and we'll see, if, we can have the discussion about whether it's a good idea to prosecute ex-presidents and all that and whatever. Maybe it's imperative. I mean, maybe the only way back from this precipice that we've been on is to prosecute people for crimes, and even if they were the president once upon a time. But what's scary is that they now know that they can actually get people to not go to work. They can't actually get people to rat on their neighbor. They can't actually get people to subscribe to science that turns out to be less than scientific. They can't actually get people to be afraid of and willing to rat out. People said, maybe not so jokingly, if you ever wondered who was willing to put you on a train, you can now know, right? Like, there's a montage going around about, all the talking heads on the various networks about, talking about the unvaccinated as the enemy and everything. It's like that, it worked.
Well, they're treasonous, and they know that they're going to hang. They know that if they lose this, and that they know that if that president gets voted back in, they are going to pay a price for it, and it very well could be some of their lives. The powers that be, the very finite small amount of the elite, look at you and me and all of us as cockroaches. They control things, and we are just in their way. It's the same people saying they need to reduce the population. I mean, you even have the vice president, whether she's just a blabbering idiot or it was, choreographed, but she says now that we are reducing the population. And you have these whole conglomerations of videos of all of these talking mouthpieces saying the exact same shit.
Yeah, the ability, I think we've gotten to a dangerous place in our world, in our country, where, and let me say, I didn't vote for Trump, I didn't vote for Biden, I didn't vote for Hillary, and I won't vote for any of them ever. My politics have unfortunately been driven to somewhere on the spectrum between like libertarian and anarchist, because it's pretty clear that we can't trust any of them. They are all beholden to some corporate moneyed organization or loose organization even. And unfortunately what's happened is we've gotten into a situation where if you want to be told how smart you are for believing what you believe and how despicable and deplorable the others are for what they believe, then you can literally tune into that 24 hours a day on your television or your satellite radio. And maybe not coincidentally, those channels are right next to each other on the dial. Like I could literally turn on XM radio and go to one channel, and for 24 hours a day, they will tell me how smart I am if I believe X, and how despicable and beneath contempt anyone who doesn't agree with us is, and how stupid they are. And then one click to the left or right, and I can be on a channel that is the same turned inside out. And it's robbed us of the ability to debate policy. Now, all policies are an article of faith. And if you don't believe my policy, then you are not only not worth talking to, you are my enemy. And that can't go anywhere good. That can't lead to consensus. It sets up a zero-sum game where someone has to lose and someone has to win. And the stakes, as we can see, are growing higher and higher. And I don't think your average American wants the stakes to be what they are becoming. Like it is an existential threat to our culture and our community.
Well, everybody knows, Hitler. Everybody knows Hitler for what happened. What they don't realize is how did Hitler come to power? What happened prior to that between World War I and World War II and all of that in there? And you're seeing that play out. Like if that other side, if the right side got back in place and there is punishment, you very well could be creating that right now. Like that punishment, it's going to come down.
Yeah. I think it's scary because, like I said, it's a situation in which if you just sit down next to a stranger on a plane, man, you start hearing buzzwords and you're like, I don't know if you have, like the number of people that can disagree with you and still extend respect is diminishing. The number of people who can say, well, we can agree to disagree about that and still have a polite dialogue, even whether it's even on the subject matter of the policy dispute. Just ride with me on a plane and have, and talk about your grandchildren. We're at a place where people will just, cancel you if you don't subscribe to the same article of faith that they do. And when I say article of faith, what I mean is like, I believe in policy X, and they hold it with religious fervor. And there is no room for debate or reconsideration one of the Stoic philosophers said, you cannot learn what you already know. So if you begin every day believing that you know all that you need to know, you will learn nothing ever.
And you're saying that as somebody who is not stuck on social media.
Well, that's part of the reason I had to get off of it because, and you've heard me say this, John, and you may too, Nicole. I decided some years ago, I started asking myself, and I remember this happened about the time that iPhone started giving you screen time and telling you, hey, this is how much time you spent on Facebook. This is how much time you spent on Instagram. And I remember being shocked and appalled at how much time was leaking out of my life and into these platforms. And I thought, well, if it's 15 hours a week that's going into these scrolling, whatever, if it's 15 or 20 hours, and that may be a conservative estimate, and it might be a fraction of what some people are actually doing without thinking about it. I mean, I understand people who promote themselves and monetize the situation. I get that. John, you do that. Nicole, you do that. I get that. If it's your business model to get eyes on your product, fine. But if you're just doom scrolling and you're doing 15 or 20 hours a week, ask yourself why. But I did ask myself that. I thought, would my life be better off if I took those, say, 15 hours a week and I stopped going on social media and I read a book, went for a walk, talked to my wife, or went to sleep? If I just substituted the same hours for any of those 4 other activities, would my life be better off? Well, obviously, it clearly, you can't even argue the other side of that, right? So I said, well, I'm going to do it. So I got out. What I didn't anticipate, but what happened really quickly, was that, yes, my life did get better if I took the same time and read a book, talked to my wife, went to sleep, or went for a walk. But actually, what most immediately improved my life was that I had removed from my life mostly the negative emotions of schadenfreude, greed, lust, envy, contempt. Because I was no longer looking at Facebook and going, ha ha, you finally got what you had coming. Or, she's hot. Why do you get to be with her? Or I wish I had that watch, or whatever. All those negative emotions that are intentionally created and generated as an addiction through social media, and if you just stumble into that stuff, inevitably the algorithms will get you into that echo chamber where you are told how smart you are for believing what you believe, and, oh, by the way, buy this product.
Yeah.
And you're not better off if you let that happen to you.
That could be a whole presentation on its own. That's really interesting to me.
I've thought about, this is part of what I think about when I think about, well, what would I tell people if they were willing to listen?
Yeah.
It's that, among other things.
Well, I think about different learning styles and how people learn. And I'm a kinesthetic learner and a verbalizer, not a surprise there because I'm a podcaster. And if you cannot have a conversation with somebody where you disagree and listen to their side and they listen to if I don't go through that process, I learn slower.
Well,
so
I think
this whole situation, it's like I have to be in a place where I say, no, I don't think that's true, and this is why. And then somebody challenges me, and then I look
that's
at
right.
that.
Well, if you're right, right? If you're right for you, and many of these things are subjective, right? Like, right for me may not be right for you. We can both be right, even though we apply different decisions or policies. It might be right for you and it might be right for me. We don't, some things are a little bit more universal. That's fine. But if I can't articulate a defense to my decision, then why do I hold it? And if I can articulate a defense for my decision in the face of a reasonable, rational alternative, if I come away from that conversation convinced that I remain mostly right, I'm better off. If I allowed my belief to be challenged and nonetheless leave believing that even in the face of this alternative evidence or this alternative policy or whatever, I choose again with the further informed knowledge to again go back to my belief, then I'm better off. If I just subscribe to a belief and never let it be challenged and never let anyone give me a different thought about it, well, then I'm just an ideologue. I'm just a zealot. I'm not, if I just put my blinders on and never consider something else, I don't think my life gets better for that.
But how many people have listened to the other side, analyzed, took it in, and then realized, yep, I'm still right. So maybe a lot of people are just so damn solid right now and have listened that they're just done fucking listening.
When it comes to the extreme edges of the spectrums, I get it. Like I understand why, like, there are certain policy positions that you can talk to your blue in the face and make your best argument. And I'm just going to say we were done before we started. I think the vast majority of people don't live 4 standard deviations away from center. They live closer to center. There's a sort of a bell curve distribution for, I mean, you know, like most people, I think most people want to just make their choices and be left alone. Right. So if my policies and my personal beliefs mostly are, hey, if that's what you want to do, that's fine. Just don't jam me up as I choose my thing. That's probably most people, right?
Isn't that anarchism, though? I mean, just you do you, I do me. You don't get a say in what I do, and I don't get to say what you do. That's really what that word means at the rawest form.
Yeah, taking it to its logical extreme, it is. We've signed a social compact, more or less, where
co-opted.
I get to do what I want to do and you get to do what you want to do, but we're not going to kill each other. So if we start out with let's not make murder okay, then we're not at anarchy, right? Anarchy would literally mean if I shoot and kill you for any reason or no reason at all, it doesn't matter. No, there's no law, there's no authority, there's no social compact. I don't want to live there. So we can start with like a short list of rules we can probably pretty quickly agree on. I won't murder you. You don't murder me. I won't rape your wife or your daughter, and you won't rape mine. We can sort of start to agree upon a lot of things. Most of those things fall in the category of leave me alone. I'll leave you alone.
Well, you only 10. There are 10 laws that you must follow, right? And if we go back, most of the rest are unraveling, and just those 10 cover all that other minutia down there.
Most of them, yep, I agree.
And then when you put in the non-aggression principle, I don't get to do anything to you that causes negative, harms you in a negative fashion, and vice versa. But the problem with that is that there are so many people making money from all of this that we can't live in that manner.
Yeah, I think, the more rules you write, the more exceptions you create for the exception that you previously created, and so on, right? And so at some point there's sort of a reset, right? But the nature of bureaucracy and government is that it has to expand, right? Every bureaucrat, every government official every general wants a larger army, right? Like if a general has 5,000, he'd rather have 10. So how do you get 10,000, right? So congressmen don't get elected to go up to Washington and offer no bills and change no laws and sit there and say, don't you think we have enough laws? That doesn't run campaigns. That doesn't get you reelected.
Right. They've all been purchased.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah.
If I could change one thing about America right now, it would be I would take all the corporate money out of every election and I would make every election publicly funded. We would set a threshold to be on the ballot. And if you got on the ballot, and when I say threshold, I mean like individual donations plus signatures or something like that, something that would give some credit. Not every crackpot can be on the ballot just by asking. You have to generate some kind of organization and support from individuals, constituents. So I would ban all corporate money, and I would ban all extra outside of your jurisdiction donations. So if you live in Tennessee, you cannot donate to Senate campaign in Minnesota. I would take all the money out. It would be strictly individual donors, and once you were on the ballot, then the taxpayers would provide a flat amount of money to spend on your campaign, and the same amount to every candidate who likewise qualified. I think that would solve maybe 90% of the gridlock and problems that exist in Washington, because then you would have a bona fide competition of ideas and policy, and not a bunch of corporate whores sent to Washington to legislate in favor of their sponsor.
Yep. Term limits, age limits.
I wouldn't do term limits.
mental capacity.
I wouldn't do term limits and I wouldn't do age limits, and I'll tell you why. Not every 80-year-old is the same. And I wouldn't do term limits because that would be similar to saying, do you like your dentist? Too bad. You've had that dentist for 8 years. You now have to pick a different dentist. Why? Because we don't want anyone getting the same dentist. It's too much power in one dentist. I don't think that is helpful. I think if you have a congressman that goes to Washington and does his or her job and adequately represents the constituency, there's no particular reason that they should not be allowed to ask for the job again. And I think all of the things that people want to solve with term limits are absolutely solved with the money reforms that I just discussed. If you took the corporate money and the large donors and the interstate donors out of the politics and put every congressman to the task of debating their policies and getting the same amount of money to run their campaigns, you wouldn't if you did that for one generation, you wouldn't even think about term limits as a solution. It would be unnecessary.
I think what term limits do is address the incumbent issue in an election where everybody has the same funding. The incumbent has an advantage.
That may be true, but here's the thing. If you don't solve the money problem, then all the corporate sponsors will do is find their next whore and be ready to turn over all the money to the next whore. You'll just create a merry-go-round of whores. So I think if you solve the money problem, the term limit thing, yes, there's some advantage to incumbency. I think that's true. But every incumbent also generates from the beginning, and I know this from having been elected 6 times, every incumbent has to make decisions that can become unpopular. And so you can become sometimes a principled stand on an issue is the undoing of a politician. So I'm less interested in term limits for the sake of generating change. And I don't think if you just did term limits and didn't change the money problem, all you would wind up with is they would groom another whore and they would put the replacement whore in your seat immediately upon the expiration of your term limit, and nothing would change.
All righty, guys. I actually have an appointment coming up here in the beautiful metropolis of Medford, Oregon. So I'm wondering if we can go once around the horn and not that one.
Not that horn.
Not that horn, this horn, before we sign off. So answer this question and then share anything you want to share and we'll sign off for today. What is a hobby, sport, or activity each of you do that most people don't know about? Let's start with you, Dana.
People that talk to me probably know this. I read voraciously. I read history, philosophy, and literature. I read the Bible every day, and I'm teaching myself Spanish.
All right. John?
I collect haunted things.
And people don't know that?
Most people don't know that. Dana knows it very well.
Every time I go to John's place, it's there's something creepier than the last time.
I can't think of anything that people don't know about me if they listen to my podcast because I talk about it. But I guess most people don't remember that I am a fluent German speaker, which is not what they're expecting when they meet me. I just learned the language, and because of that, learned that learning another language, so good on you for learning Spanish, changes your perspective on how you think about problems. So investing time in learning a totally different language where they say the same concept in different words,
right,
changes how your brain analyzes problems. And I'm always, right. I think it's just like when you see other things or go other places or meet different people from you, it changes how your brain analyzes problems.
And
so
I picked Spanish because it might prove more useful than other languages for me. But I decided to teach myself a language I don't speak, literally to map different neural pathways in my brain so that as I get older, my brain has some resistance and resilience against cognitive decline.
Awesome. Well, Dana, thanks for making time for us today. I really appreciate it. I hope to get you back on and talk a little bit more about this publicly funded election thing. So I think you and I could have some fun debates on that topic because I've thought about it a lot too.
Yeah.
So let's
I'm
go
not
back.
against term limits necessarily. I just don't think that you would want term limits if you could fix the money problem.
Yeah, no, and I think we could have a good talk on that. That would be really interesting as an outcome, just for.
I am certainly willing to listen.
Yes, same. So we'll see you back on here soon, I hope, and I'll see you at Self-Reliance Festival, October 14th and 15th.
Anytime.
We'll see what that topic's going to be. There's a lot that came out in this discussion. We don't necessarily have to be about guns, right?
No. Honestly, if you meet me in public and you ask me about this gun or that, I'm going to be bored real quick. I don't really know that much about gadgets and doodads.
Well, guys, don't forget to get your tickets. Self-Reliance Festival, selfreliancefestival.com. You can buy an awesome T-shirt at is it soetacticalgear.com is your primary? It's everything. He has lots of domain names. And then check out Dana's work. It's, what'd you say, McClendonlaw.com?
Yep. If you're just looking to contact me, go there, and there's a way you can send me an email.
And you can find all my stuff at NicoleSauce.com. We'll see you next time.